Okay, so I tried to record this video yesterday, and I just wasn't happy with it after the fact. So trying it again. So this one is going to be about player disconnects, and I guess when to drop out of a game, and that kind of thing. So I've been at a variety of different tables in my D&D career. Illustrious accolades, titles, blah blah blah. So I've been at a few different tables. Not a lot, a few. Like, if you're counting like different permutations of mostly the same players in a different place, then like 6-ish tables. But it doesn't matter. So, and I've played with a lot of players that have a variety of disconnects. And kind of one of the main themes of those types of players was always that they're not there for the game. They were there for the social interaction and the social event. They're just there because it's what their friends are doing. And for the most part, that's fine. It's more than fine to just be basically an audience member. You know what I mean? Man, this guy's going slow. So, if you're just an audience member, you're not doing a whole lot of character interactions. You're not really driving the plot. You're staying as reactive as possible. And I've had a lot of players like that. And it was fine. Especially, for the most part, they were invested enough in the game. Some of these players more than others, but they're fine, especially if there's at least one or two other players that are willing to step in and drive the plot forward. There was one game where basically everybody except me was one of those players. So I was basically the main character and everyone else was supporting characters. And that was interesting, but I definitely realized that I really, really want other players to bounce off of. If it's just me and the DM, and then the other players are oh, guidance, and that's kind of it, I'm not into that as much, you know? But one of the problems arises is when one of those types of players disconnects from the game itself. When they're when their blend of interest is, social interaction, hanging with friends, and the game, and the game's down here, that's fine. But when the game is down here, then it becomes an issue. When they're actively disinterested in the game itself, and they get bored all the time, and they're wandering off, and they're sitting on their phone. Not into that. So, I guess I want to go over some examples. I want to be clear, this video is sparked by a recent bit of drama that happened in my Monday night game. But, I've got, I guess, 2 examples. We'll see. So, the first example, kind of the first time this happened to me, around me, it was in a one-shot that my good friend Zia was DMing. And Zia is one of the players I play with all the time. I'm not sure if I'm should avoid name dropping on this channel or what. I don't know. It's not important. So we were doing this one-shot, and there was this one player that I would come to realize was a very deliberately antagonistic player later on, because when I was developing my concept for the SCP campaign that I ran for a little while, they wanted to be a triple agent chaos insurgency traitor back and forth. It was why is this so complicated, dude? Why do you want to do this ridiculous ultra secret gotcha type character? What is this? But anyway, we were playing this. We were doing this one shot. We were like tracking down some missing persons, and we tracked it to this like cave. And most of the party is like, we found this entrance and we're getting ready to go in. And this problem player peeled off. He was playing a turtle, and he just swam down the river. He just left. He didn't tell us he was leaving. He just dipped. Bye. Like, okay. And he just sailed down the river. So while the rest of the party is like in the cave, dealing with stuff in the cave, he's just peacefully floating down the river. To the point where, like, we went through the whole cave without him. And he didn't end up showing up again until, like, the boss fight at the end of the cave, which the DM, I don't know if the DM had this planned or they came up with it, or this was, like, a separate thread that we were supposed to go look for or had the option of looking for. But this character floated all the way down, like, down the creek into this, like, clearing, and there was like this druid or ranger or something, some kind of character, like a forest witch, I don't really remember, that was like waiting for him or appeared to them and was like, oh, hey, what's up? Oh, you're looking for these people? Yeah, let me help you out. Like, basically. It was more complicated than that, but so if that was something the DM came up with on the fly, then that was a really great maneuver to bring that fucking character back to the actual party instead of like off over here fucking on their own with a thumb up their ass. And then that player wasn't like a huge problem other than that. Like, they were all right. They ended up running their own one shot that was a little weird. That one was a high level one shot, and and the things with high level one shots, it's like you want to run stuff by people. Like, I was playing a warlock, and I built like the whole high level version of the warlock with like invisibility and all this other stuff. And then we fought Orcus, who was true sight. So like half of the stuff I picked, it didn't matter. Like, and I'm not saying like you have to tailor your players' kits and say like, hey, don't pick this, don't pick this. But you have to say like, hey, invisibility's not going to be as useful in this. Just say that and like give them the option of changing it. Because if you gave me the option of changing it, I would have still kept I probably would have still kept the one invocation I took that lets you turn invisible at will. I still would have taken it because I like it. But I wouldn't have used all my spell slots on invisibility, on greater invisibility. Like, come on. And that's also a theme with this other situation. But the next time this kind of thing happened, we were playing, like, we were in another cave. It was a slightly different group. And we're in this cave, we find this underwater section, and there's a sea elf with us, one of the players. And the sea elf, we have them like, oh, go into the water and find out where to go. Like, scout ahead and then come back and report. Okay, well, they scouted ahead. They went, they found like, an open section of cave, but they didn't report back. They just went off on their own. And they're a wizard. They have no health. So they're going off on their own. We're sitting there twiddling our thumbs. And then they fall into a mimic trap. Because, of course they do. And which actually is something the DM put there on the spot, because the player was like wandering off on their own for like a half hour real time. The rest of us aren't playing the game. We're just sitting there. So our characters, after like 5 minutes in game, are like, she's been gone too long, and we go in, and it's not very long. So we catch up to her, we fight these mimics, blah blah blah, and then my character chews her the fuck out for this. And that player was kind of always a problem player, like, as opposed to the first example. This player was always just doing random shit, not really paying attention to what the other players are doing, just always doing their own thing. And in some cases, that's kind of the big part. Like, but a big theme is these players like this, they don't think about consequences, or they don't want to think about consequences. So the big example that happened in our Monday night game, one of the players we've been playing with for 2 years, it's their spotlight, they're the main character, and in the middle of it, they kind of go off on their own. One of the other players already went off on their own, but that player, I know for a fact, is fully prepared to embrace any consequences that occur. Like, they go off on their own, they know they're probably going to die. It literally happened before with their main character that had been playing for 1.5 years or longer at that point. Like, this already happened. They are fine with consequences. So the other character went off, and they ended up fighting the boss early. And they started getting their shit wrecked, because it was a boss designed for all 5 characters, and it's just 2 of them. It's not going too well. And especially because this boss has a lot of stuns. And stuns, that's a separate video, using stuns and paralyzes on players. That's a separate discussion, but it would have been fine if it was all 5 of us. So this player goes off on their own, they start getting their shit rocked. Then the whole, everything starts turning sour. The rest of the party barely manages to get to them, but our resources are run way too low to win at this point. So we have to retreat, and that first initial character, the player that's fine with consequences, their character ends up dying. They're fine with that, but the spotlight player is salty. They're salty about it. They end up, a lot of the time we'll end up sticking around after session for at least a few minutes. They just dip right away, say, "Oh, I'm tired, bye." And that was the last time we talked to them, because the next morning they just drop out of the game, don't say anything in the chat, and just disappear. Pretty rude. So this player just kind of wanted a power fantasy. Just wanted to roll in, beat up a bunch of ninjas, do a dungeon crawl, and win. And that's fine if they had communicated that to the DM first. There's a lot going on here. This player was playing a healer that barely interacted with the game at all for the longest time. That healer ended up dying. And then, they wanted that healer back. That this druid back. But every opportunity we said, "Hey, we can go pursue this now," he was just like, "No, it's okay." Okay. Even the DM asked if, "Hey, for your spotlight, do you want it to be centered around your druid to bring them back?" "No, it's fine. I like playing my new monk that's, more interactive." Okay. But come to find out, this character wasn't engaging with the game barely at all, because they had a ton of money that was supposed to be spent on magic items and gear and supplies, and they didn't use it on anything. And the gear and magic items they had didn't really make any sense. They had a ring of mind shielding, which is a really cool item. I actually took it for the dwarf I was playing in that spotlight. But the reason I took it for the dwarf was because he has this whole backstory where he was a slave for mind flayers, and so he's paranoid about having his mind read. It made sense for that character, and he doesn't need a whole lot of other gear. So that made sense for that character. But for the monk, a monk needs as much magic items as he could get, right? He could take, I think he at least had bracers of defense, but that was kind of it. He didn't have anything else that really helped him out in combat. He didn't have insignia of claws or an eldritch claw tattoo or +2 hand wraps or, anything that helps him out directly in combat. He didn't have a dragonhide belt. He didn't have a periapt of health or amulet of health or anything that would actually help him, help his survivability, help his damage, anything like that. He was just base monk with some bracers of defense, and that was basically it. Like, so of course he didn't perform all that well in combat, and he was salty about it. And then this morning I was like looking at, like, I had a little extra time with my coffee, so I'm like looking at stuff in Roll20, and I still have access to one of the characters he played for a spotlight, another monk, and that character also had like $10,000 just sitting around, like not doing anything. I don't even know what that character had. Like, it's like stuff like that is, I don't want to use the term upsetting, but it is annoying. Because, like, what do you do? Like, are you planning with this character at all? Or you just, like, whip up a character in 5 minutes and just like, okay, let's play. And just roll dice. And that's, that's the type of player he was. He's just going to roll dice. Like, he's not engaging, like, minimal engagement. In fact, like, the last spotlight for the wizard, he whipped up this druid that, like, said, like, all of 4 lines the entire time, and basically just turned into an animal and rolled dice. Like, he's just doing that. Like, that's one of the reasons I think he's always played healers in these games, because he doesn't want to think. He doesn't really want to engage too much. And again, that is fine. But when you finally decide to, like, take actions and be proactive, and you don't think about consequences and it bites you in the ass, you can't be mad about it, right? You know what I mean? You can't be mad about it. And he was. So, I don't know. This was still kind of a bitchy video, but I'm trying to think if there's any other. I've got a few minutes to spare before I have to clock in. I'm trying to think if there's any other, like, little tidbits or bits of information I want to convey about players like this, but ultimately it's like there's a lot of players like this, and really just D&D is not for them. They shouldn't be playing it. They should go play a video game. I guess, well, another example, this same player from Monday, he's in one of our other games, and he was playing a bugbear fighter, and he would make decisions that would very likely get him killed, but he was fine with it. Like, he's just playing this character, and he's like, oh, this character's gonna get killed. That's fine. That's way more, and he was way more engaged in that game. So I don't know why he couldn't engage with the first game. Was it just that he missed his druid so much? I don't know, and I guess we won't know. But we pivoted, we restructured, like, we're moving on. But players like that suck, man. It's just, you got to be at least a little engaged. So, yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Mild bitching.